In this Elder Scrolls build guide, I'm going to cover a Necromancer stamina DPS build that can do over 50k DPS on an Iron Atronach trial dummy, or 35k plus on a normal 3 million health dummy. This build is aimed for PvE group play while relying on allies to buff your survivability so that you can dish out an enormous amount of damage. This build uses a typical stamina DPS setup combined with Necromancer DPS abilities that are morphed into their stamina versions. High DPS comes from properly rotating Necromancer abilities that are mixed with dual wield and bow skills. Stamina DPS builds in many cases use dual wield for their front bar and bow for their back bar, and this build uses the same setup because it works the best for what we're trying to accomplish. Instead of elemental damage, Venom Skull, Blighted Blast Bones, and Detonating Siphon are going to do disease and poison damage, which is perfect for stamina DPS. Putting all points into stamina is great for achieving the highest possible DPS numbers, but in reality you need some more health to not die all the time when the going gets tough. Splitting points between health and stamina should be something like 15 points into health, and the rest into stamina. Depending on gear and food buffs, health goes up somewhere between 20 to 25k, and stamina is around 30 to 36k. As for abilities, your front bar consists of dual wield and Necromancer mix. With this setup, we inflict bleed and poison dots on top of dealing lots of direct damage. Whirling Blades is great to speed up an enemy's demise when their health goes below 50% because it does 100% increased damage. It's an ability that does not need to be used at all before an enemy falls below 50% health to conserve stamina, but should be used when more enemies are in the vicinity. Rending Slashes puts a bleed dot effect that ticks while we focus on doing our Necro DPS combo, Blighted Blast Bones, Venom Skull, and Detonating Siphon. The back bar consists of many different abilities that help in achieving higher DPS numbers. Skeletal Archer doesn't seem like a good choice at first glance, however we get an additional 10% crit chance against enemies under 25% health with the Death Knell passive by just having Skeletal Archer slotted. With this setup, the bonus from Death Knell is 30% for both bars. The benefits of having Skeletal Archer do not stop with Death Knell either, as Undead Confederate grants 200 Magicka and Stamina recovery when any summon is active. Front bar, Rending Slashes, an ability that puts a significant bleed dot that lasts for 9 seconds and reduces movement speed by 40%. Morphed from Twin Slashes. Whirling Blades, a fantastic ability for when enemies drop under 50% health. It can be used when enemies have over 50%, but it's not going to be nearly as effective. However, by using this skill you are granted Major Endurance, which increases stamina recovery by 20% for 10 seconds, so if you're struggling with stamina, use it occasionally even when enemies are over 50%. Morphed from Whirlwind. Venom Skull, a direct damage ability that does poison damage, and every Necromancer ability counts towards the third cast of Venom Skull that does 20% increased damage. Morphed from Flame Skull. Blighted Blast Bones, summons a skeleton that runs at enemies and deals big disease damage to everyone around it upon exploding. Disease damage also puts Major Defile on enemies that reduces their healing received and health recovery that isn't that useful in PvE, but is very good in PvP. Creates a corpse upon death. Morphed from Blast Bones. Detonating Siphon, consumes a corpse that explodes and deals a massive dot over 12 seconds. Everyone between you and the corpse is affected as well. When slotted, increases damage done by 3%. Morphed from Shocking Siphon. Back bar, Endless Hail, an ability that does consecutive damage for 10 seconds in a target area. This upgrade increases the duration and reduces cost. Morphed from Volley. Poison Injection, a poison dot ability that does 200% damage more to enemies that are lower than 50% health. Morphed from Poison Arrow. Rearming Trap, a trap that resets itself and does physical damage. Upon damaging the enemy, you are granted Minor Force that increases critical damage by 10%. Morphed from Trap Beast. Skeletal Archer, summons a Skeletal Archer that does low damage on its own, but it's nice to have nonetheless due to Death Knell and Undead Confederate. Morphed from Skeletal Mage. The last back bar ability can be whatever you see fit. Detonating Siphon can be placed here as well to increase damage done by 3% when using back bar abilities. Razor Caltrops can do some more damage while rotating abilities. Summoner's Armor is a nice choice if you want to add more survivability with Major Ward and Major Resolve. Hungry Scythe, Resistant Flesh, and Resolving Vigor are there if you want to use the last slot for healing. Ultimate abilities. Flawless Dawnbreaker. This ability is very popular for DPS builds because just by slotting it you get a weapon damage increase. It is best equipped on the front bar. Flawless Dawnbreaker won't be used that much though because we use it only for the passive weapon damage it increases. Morphed from Dawnbreaker. Pestilent Colossus, a high damage ultimate that does disease damage and applies major vulnerability for 3 seconds after each strike. This is the ultimate that we're going to use all the time because it does much more damage than Dawnbreaker. Morphed from Frozen Colossus. Rotation can be divided into 2 methods. Enemy over 50% health. For this version we do not need to use Whirling Blades at all unless there are many enemies close to you. Light attacking is mandatory before every ability, with heavy attacks being used when stamina is needed. In the end it should look like this. Skeletal Archer, Unnerving Boneyard, Rearming Trap, Poison Injection, Endless Hail, Switch, Rending Slashes, Blighted Blast Bones, Venom Skull ×2, Detonating Siphon. Enemy under 50% health. This time we're adding Whirling Blades into the mix. It goes Skeletal Archer, Unnerving Boneyard, Rearming Trap, Poison Injection, Endless Hail, Swish, Rending Slashes, Whirling Blades, Blighted Blast Bones, Venom Skull, Whirling Blades, Detonating Siphon. Any race that influences stamina in any way is good for this build. However, there are some that are better than others, with Redguard and Khajiit being your primary choices. Redguard gives plus 2000 max stamina, reduces the cost of weapon abilities by 8%, and restores 950 stamina every 5 seconds when dealing direct damage. Khajiit, in addition to increasing all 3 resources and recovery, increases critical damage and healing by 10%. Imperial, Dubner, and Bosner are okay alternatives, with Imperial being the best choice out of the 3. There are plenty of useful champion skills you can have, but points are limited. Percentages behind the decimal point are not accounted for when adding points to champion skills. For example, Elemental Defender at rank 60 reduces damage taken from elemental attacks by 12.57%, but your gain is actually 12%. Now that you know this, you can save points and put them elsewhere where gains would be more beneficial. Try to round up the numbers to get the most out of these champion skills. The following is my recommended setup for the Necromancer Stamina DPS build. The weapon combination that we're using is dual weapons on the front bar with bow on the back bar. Which weapons you are going to use for dual wield is up to you because each has something going for it. Maelstrom Bow is the best choice for the back bar because it improves the Endless Hail ability. Bows are generally used on back bars for stamina DPS builds because of Endless Hail and Poison Injection abilities that last for 10 seconds, which is enough to keep doing damage while the front bar abilities are being rotated. Sets that can be used for this build are typical stamina DPS sets. Before acquiring trial gear, sets like Hunding's Rage, Briarheart, and Nightmother's Embrace are great choices because they're fairly easy to obtain and provide great bonuses. As you progress further, sets like Scavenging Demise, Pillar of Nirn, Archer's Mind, Deadly Strike, and Flanking Strategist should be on your radar. There are really many great sets for stamina DPS, so it's hard to pick something really bad. Trial gear that works great here is Arms of Reliquin, Tooth of Arlaka Stiz, Roar of Alkosh, Quick Serpent, and Poisonous Serpent. Monster sets that are the best for this build are Veladreth, Slimecraw, and Selene. I tested all 3 with Briarheart and Arms of Reliquin, and all performed similarly. I suggest using heavy versions of monster sets to get more health. Traits and enchantments: weapons, weapon damage glyph, and precise and Nirnhone traits. Armor, stamina glyph, and divine traits. Jewelry, weapon damage glyph, and bloodthirsty traits. Final thoughts: stamina Necromancer DPS builds are slightly stronger than their Magicka counterparts. They can hang with the best and are fun to play thanks to Necro DPS abilities that make rotations dynamic, which is due to Blighted Blast Bones needing some time to get to the enemy. This build is meant for PvE group play, so solo you're going to need some heals and increased resistances. In this case, Summoner Armor for resistance and Hungry Scythe, Resistant Flesh, or Resolving Vigor for heals are good choices. Mundus stones that work best are Shadow and Tower. Shadow is a better choice when you have mastered the rotation because then stamina will be used more efficiently, and Tower is better for learning the ropes so that you do not run out of stamina so easily. Stay tuned for more ESO builds and ESO content throughout June as we dive deeper into Elsweyr.